All right, my friends, welcome back to another V-Rising video. This is going to be a quick build overview of a very fun build that I have been running in V-Arena recently, just messing around. This build focuses around recasts and a scholar build, especially with the Phantasm stacks. So let's go ahead and jump into the spells here. First things first, let's address the elephant in the room here, which is Veil of Illusion. If you're a PvP veteran in this game, you know that this spell is generally complete trash. Particularly because the current meta just focuses so much around counters. If someone's running something like Bloodright, it can heal every single time this dash goes off and it shoots something like this. You're giving them an opportunity to proc a counter. So this would be something like Bloodright. This would give them a chance to just heal themselves every time that goes off. If they're running Mistrance, it would give them a chance to, reset their stuff, fear you, get Phantasm, etc., etc. And the biggest downside would be something like Cold Snap. So Cold Snap is super, super popular at the moment because it just gives you a gigantic shield and freezes and gives you a big movement speed bonus. So if somebody's running a Dreadplate build where they are, getting increased shields from the three-piece bonus, they get increased shields, and then they have the jewel that gives them even more shields. You're kind of just giving them an opportunity to get tons of shields right away. The reason I'm using it, though, is because the prevalence of Discharge, with the prevalence of Discharge right now in the game, Veil of Illusion interaction with Discharge is actually kind of interesting, and Discharge is pretty popular overall. And it's not really that big of a deal whenever Discharge procs off of Veil of Illusion. What ends up happening is you do this, and this hits them, and if they pop Discharge, it will actually pull the silhouette to them instead of you. So you dash like this, it does this, and you can do something like that, right? So it pulls them in, or they discharge, or you can do something like this. Right, there you go, like this, and then it pulls you in, and then you can do that, right? So overall, it's not just for, really, whenever this procs have discharge, it's not that big of a deal. The biggest problem is going to be Cold Snap. You definitely have to watch out for that. However, another thing to note is if you come back fast enough, right, it can throw one projectile out unless they're looking to reset off of that initial projectile. A lot of times you can actually get away without it doing anything. You can also, sometimes they just won't proc the Cold Snap, right? So but again, I'm not trying to say that it's always something you could work with. I'm just saying that is sometimes you can get away with it, and it is fun to do, especially with the 4 Phantasm stacks, which is just such a huge deal. All right, next spell we're going to talk about is Mistrance. So, I'm sorry, let's go back. If you don't want to use Veil of Illusion, I would just use something like Veil of Chaos or Veil of Frost or anything else, really. Maybe even Veil of Static or Veil of Storm, but probably Veil of Chaos just to give you more mobility and the ability to dodge around. Okay, so second spell. This is the most important spell of the whole build, which is going to be Mistrance. Just the gem that gives you 4 stacks of Phantasm is crazy, and the Fear is also extremely important. Those 2 abilities specifically on this jewel are the most important thing for you to have. Weapon cooldown reset, pretty cool. Empowered primary attack, super strong. But the Phantasm and the Fear are the most important because it lets you do things like just, if somebody closes the gap, you can fear them away and you can run away, so you can just keep spamming to your heart's content, right? Okay, and then in terms of the last spell here, or the second spell here, I'm currently using Chaos Volley. I would say the 2 best would be Chaos Volley and Crystal Lance. Crystal Lance, especially if you're running something like Hand of Winter, is really, really strong because you can hit them with the Crystal Lance, hit them with Hand of Winter. That combination does so much damage. It's really crazy. I would also do something like Veil of Frost, for example. And essentially what you're trying to do is stack up Crystal Lances and freeze them multiple times, and then also go for Hand of Winter hits or knocking them away with E whenever they're chilled. Yeah, lots of things you can do there. But for now, I'm just running Chaos Volley because the overall damage on this is legitimately crazy whenever you have all of this going at once. Increased damage and the ignite engulfing the target, those 2 are the most important here. The range and speed are also really helpful because it helps you like reach out and touch somebody. Just look how far this is. Like it's like just so far. Okay, And then, but yeah, so I would say between the two, it would be those two, Crystal Lance, Chaos Volley. You could also run Void as well if you want. My issue with Void, it's good, but the problem is movement speed is so prevalent, it's really easy for people to just walk out of this. You can cast it directly on top of them. You can even get like multiple recasts and cast 3 or 4 in a row. And if they get hit by 1, it's like, okay, neat. But the thing about Chaos Volley is 1 Chaos Volley hit is stronger than 1 Void hit. And you throw out 2 at once, right? So you just throw out 2 of these, it's super, super strong. Okay, so that's, oh yeah, and last things we're going to talk about is in terms of ults, I'm currently using Wisp Dance. Honestly, Wisp Dance is kind of nasty. So one of the reasons obviously is the Phantasm. It is really nice to be able to walk up to somebody and go like this. Every one of these hits gives you a stack of Phantasm, and you recast it, that gives you more stacks of Phantasm. So one ult can, in theory, give you 10 stacks of Phantasm pretty quickly. But one other reason I'm using it is because the initial wisps, this does not proc counters. So because of the prevalence of counters and people trying to close the gap on you, it's kind of nice as like an anti-counter tool. So whenever somebody like, attacks you like this, you can kind of just pop Wisp Dance and try to kite them and let them get hit by the things and go for the recast as well. And then whenever you're on level, I'll show you how much damage that does whenever we are at max level here. So let's just put our pendant on here. And overall, the damage is kind of crazy. Let me just look at this. That's a lot of damage. So, okay. So speaking of pendants, yeah, again, so sorry, let's go ahead and stop at Mistrance. If you don't want to use, Mistrance, Wisp Dance. If you don't want to use Wisp Dance, I would suggest you could also try Crimson Beam if you're in a team, because this also does not proc counters. You can try to do it solo. The turn radius is a lot faster, but I've messed around with it. It's fun, but it's not really all that consistent. I can make them panic, though. I will say that. It does so much damage that sometimes they panic and just, like, charge you, and then that gives you a free Mistrance proc. So, but overall, I would say either Wisp Dance. You could also go Chaos Barrage, or even just Merc Charge, Heart Strike, those kinds of types of things. Overall, I personally prefer Wisp Dance. All right, let's go ahead and go to the gear set here. So I'm running the Maleficer chest guard, the Maleficer set. One of the issues with running Scholar that you're going to run into is you're losing out on an insane amount of movement speed that you get from Rogue Blood. Rogue Blood alone by itself is equivalent in speed to a full Rogue set and a movement speed pendant and a weapon with movement speed on it. That is how much movement speed you get just running Rogue Blood. So if you're not running Rogue Blood, you're just missing so much movement speed. So you kind of have to decide if you want to lean into it or not. You actually can get away with just running something like this with the Shadow set. I've messed around with it. It's not totally horrible. You at least have some movement speed to try to keep up with the other people who are going to probably running Rogue Blood. So you can keep up a little bit like this. And it also kind of gives you a little bit of, I guess you could say, like, damage, right, on your weapons. Try to, if you get those crits, right? If you get the crits. So it kind of just depends. But personally, this is why I would kind of just lean into it. And personally, I would run the Maleficer set. Between the pendants, it's one of these 3. Whichever one you want to use, you can run this if you just want a little bit of extra movement speed on this. But if you want to just fully lean into it, it's going to be either of these 2. Personally, I think the Spellweaver pendant is going to be better, not just because the Lesser Phantomagus can proc like this and give you a stack of Phantasm. That is super nice, but more so because the Lesser Phantomagus is helpful to survive, and you're kind of really easy to explode whenever you're wearing this set here and running Scholar Blood. So it's nice to have a little bit of survivability, and more spell cooldown means more chance for recast, which means more chance for Phantasm stuff, which means more chance for damage. So me personally, I think it's this one. Otherwise, I guess you could run Arch Warlock for spell crit, but personally, I think it'd probably be Spellweaver. Okay, and in terms of weapons, so as far as weapons go, the only thing that I would really suggest you give a try here is going to be the Siren's Wail. This thing is honestly crazy. It is, in my opinion, best in slot crossbow in the game. No other crossbow does really anything compared to how good this is, because the snapshot is just simply so powerful. It allows you to do things if you have infusions on your greatsword, whip, or even you can have them on slashers as well if you'd like to, but greatsword, whip, it allows you to do things like this. Just so strong, right? So you greatsword Q them to apply the weaken, swap to your crossbow, E to fear them, right? It's just basically an instant fear, and it is a true combo if we do like this. That's a true combo. They cannot get out of that. So very, very strong. In terms of stats on your weapons, I'm gonna leave that up to you to decide what you want to run on these. I don't think it's really worth discussing exactly what the best in slot thing is here, particularly because in open world, unless you're on a server for a super, super, super long time, there really is not it's not, in my opinion, realistic to build a weapon around perfect stats unless you're on there for a super long time. What you're really generally going to be in building for is going to be the infusion and maybe 1 or 2 stats that you're going to look at, like, you know, it'd be cool to have crit chance and like move speed or something. But again, mostly you're looking for that infusion. So for me, I would say Greatsword Whip, pretty good to have infusion weaken on these, so that you can enable the crossbow E like that, right? So overall, build is super, super fun. I'm going to show, obviously I've been showing some highlights as this has been going on. So hopefully you have been enjoying this, and just give it a try, see what you think. Yeah. And anyway, thanks for watching and enjoy the fights.